Jamie Zhu, so good to have you here, my friend.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Mate, my pleasure. It's been a little while in the making, this one, and you're a character who has fascinated me because I feel like your life has changed a lot in the last couple of years. I feel it's a major, in a movie you'd call it a character arc.
Yeah.
But, from that moment back 2019, I think, where you're at the Australian Open moaning in front of a crowd of people and it catches attention online to the man that you are today, I feel from an outside perspective is very different. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, 100%, man. Very, very different. Almost like a full 180. So I'm blessed, though. I'm happy it happened. And, just on to better things.
It's interesting when you see the world that we live in right now. It's never been as accessible to the everyday human being to reach millions of people as it is now. And I guess you were at the coal front of that change in society where you become so well known across YouTube, social media, in all of its forms for these prank style videos and your style of content, which I guess you'd call it was courageous things that most people wouldn't want to do, right? Stepping into the public eye. What's it like as a young man to get that much attention, which also comes with both negative and positive comment?
Good question, man, because I obviously started YouTube and social media at like the age of 2021, so it was a very new thing, and especially considering just coming out of high school, trying to find out what it meant to be a man. I think I experienced that sort of like wave of attention very early in my life where it was almost like I didn't know what to do with it, and back then when I started in 2014, I was always like a normal kid, like obviously had a big social life, was, just a normal kid from Chatswood. And I was trying to pursue professional soccer for about 9 years. And so I'd gone to England, I tried my luck over there, gone to Serbia as well. And then, quit and then just decided to pursue this social media thing, which was very new in Australia. Only in America, it was kind of like starting to grow, but it was still very relatively non-existent in the world. And so, I guess to answer your question, after about 2 years, I found some sort of success. Obviously, the timing was immaculate because I was one of the first in, which always helps. But I think what it did to me, it was like, I don't know, from a young age, I kind of always felt like I wanted to influence people in a positive way. So I guess the reasoning behind me starting was that I wanted to show people that you could make a life out of yourself, not having to do what society always tells you have to do as normality. So go to uni, get a job, 9 to 5, get a mortgage, pay that mortgage off over the rest of your life and just die. I felt like I wanted to inspire people to have more impact in their lives and that they could actually create something that they wanted to create. And this was at the same time as that kind of like entrepreneur wave that started to come out in the world as well. So I guess, it took me a bit of time to kick off, but then once I did kick off, it was like overnight, like my life changed, I remember it was around when I hit, I think it was like 70,000 followers on Facebook because it was the Facebook era back then. And I'd hit that really quick, I think in like a month and a half. And I just remember, being like a normal kid. I used to go out and party and stuff back in the day, like go to clubs and stuff in Sydney, Darling Harbour, in the city. And, I'd be going out obviously like while making these videos and I was just like a regular guy, like no one knew me. I was just a regular kid. And then I remember I actually posted this one video that didn't even go very viral. It just happened to hit the right market, which was the Sydney, I guess, university crowd, you could say. The video was just me, like, I think it was called When You Can't Afford to Buy University Textbooks. And it was just a prank video of me going around in Sydney Uni just stealing people's books or pretending to steal their books off their tables. And that video got like, I think it was 500,000 views on Facebook. And I remember so clearly the day that it happened. As I said, I used to go out a lot every Saturday, Friday night. And I remember like, as I said, normal kid, no one knew me before. But that video for some reason did something where the next weekend I went out and it was like, no exaggeration, because I know people exaggerate numbers, but I try not to. Like 15 people that night wanted photos of me. And it was like, what the hell? It was like, is this my life now? And then from that point onwards, it just catapulted, you know what I mean? To the point where, I don't want to like speak too highly of myself, but it was just like a crazy phenomenon that happened. And it was hard to know how to deal with that sort of attention. But I guess, through ups and downs, I managed to find a way,
Mate, it's so fascinating because I don't know that it's very different now, right? I don't know that it will ever happen the same way on social media that it probably did for you, just because there is so much more of it now. Like the market is more saturated. Whilst I still think that there's oodles of opportunity ahead of, you know, this market and these different industries that operate through social. It's just a very different time. But I'm curious, like you spoke about being a first mover and how influential that is to spark early success. And you spoke about the motivation of why you wanted to create that kind of content and go down that path. But what influenced you to start this? Because the first movers in any space are interesting because you kind of wonder where that idea comes from.
Bro, honestly, I think just like God led the way, man. I can't describe it. Like I just remember being in England in 2013, 2014, and, you know, trying my luck in soccer over there, then deciding to quit. And it was like, what am I going to do next? And I think what it was just God's immaculate timing. It was one of those things where when I quit football, I was like, what am I going to do now? Am I going to go to university, get a job back in Sydney, stay over in London? And I just remember, like, as you do when you have nothing better to do, you just watch videos, right? And so I was on YouTube just like pumping these videos and just watching all these guys just do funny stuff for no reason. Like I was just trying to pass the time, if I'm completely honest. But I then found these guys in Australia, only a few of them, like probably two, that were doing these really funny prank videos where it wasn't just like, I'm in public and I'm going to prank this person like that's on the phone. It was like public embarrassment pranks where it wasn't actually at the detriment of someone else. It was more so at the detriment of themselves. And it was funny because when I saw these videos, they just reminded me of myself, if I'm honest. Like back in high school, I used to be that sort of guy where I just make fun of myself. I didn't like making fun of others, but I had this kind of comedic tone of shameless, you know, self-deprecation in a comedic way. And when I saw these guys, I don't know, man, it was like this flick of a switch just happened in my head. And for some reason, I just knew I had to do the same thing because I saw myself in them. And then I found out that you could actually make a career out of just doing that. And so, you know, in terms of you speak about first mover, I don't know what I was thinking, bro. I just did it. I just came back and I had no second option. Just for some reason, I knew that if these guys are actually succeeding by doing this, I do this anyway in my own time. Like I'm just like silly, you know, at parties with my friends. So like it'd be natural for me to just naturally get into this field. So I did that, and it didn't actually kick off until, I guess, 2 years of hustling. But I guess within those 2 years, yeah, it was still like a lone wolf game, you know. I only had I'd say a couple of mates that were even motivating me to pursue it because they're all like, bro, you're going to put yourself on the internet, not just on the internet, but you're just like putting yourself on the internet, making a fool out of yourself, pranking people, embarrassing yourself. Like it's the worst look if you ever wanted to get like a normal job in the future. And I don't know, man, I just didn't care. I just was like, I'm gonna give this a shot. And I guess ended up paying off eventually.
Were there any forks in the road where you nearly stopped because you hadn't seen success for that first 2 years?
Yeah, there were. There were. The first 2 years, I hit like 9,000 subscribers on YouTube, I remember. This was before Facebook even allowed videos, before Instagram allowed videos, years and years before TikTok. And I remember there was this one moment I'd been producing content for about a year and a half. And I basically, it's funny, I said I was at university at the same time. And I was studying for this like anatomy exam. And I remember just sitting there at my desk being like, why am I doing this? I don't want to be a personal trainer. I don't want to be doing like physiotherapy in the future. What's the point of me studying for this exam? It's not what I want to do. And I remember so vividly, like I got up out of my seat and I went into the kitchen where my mum was. And I said, Mum, why do you think that this career that I know that I'm meant for isn't really working out so far? And she goes, oh, Jamie, like sometimes when these things happen to us in life, we just have to ask God. And I want you to go into your room and write a letter to God just with every question you have, and he'll answer. I was like, okay, sounds good. So I went into my room, and then she might have said the universe. I think she did back then. And then I went into my room and I wrote this letter, right? Just asking like whoever was out there for a sign. And I wrote down all my problems. I'm like, hey, this is happening to me. I've been working so hard for this. It's not working out. And then the last thing I wrote on that letter was, if social media is the career that you want me to pursue, give me a sign. So I put the letter in the envelope, stored it somewhere, and I forgot about it. And then the next day was a normal day, went to uni, went to the gym, all these things. And I remember getting an email that afternoon, and it was an email from some random media company. And they said, hey, we like one of your videos. Can we distribute it? And I was like, oh, I get these emails all the time, but sure, whatever. So I signed this contract not knowing what it even entailed. And I just, forgot about it. Next morning, so this is less than 48 hours after writing that letter, I wake up and I go over to my phone first thing, as many of us do. I don't anymore, by the way. And I go to my phone, I switch it on, and it's just notification after notification after notification. And I'm like, what's going on? And I see before I even click on anything, I see there's the tabs, the notification tabs, and it's Channel 9 News mentioned you in a video. Daily Mail shared your video. 9 News, 7 News, 10, everything, bro. Everything happened in that moment. And I was like, what's going on? And I clicked the tabs that were open. And it turns out that a video that I'd actually done 6 months ago just went viral overnight. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's my sign. And I remember that particular day I had to wake up early because I had to go and do some first aid training for my job, which was in hospitality. And I'm walking into the class and I'm thinking, oh, what the heck, man? What if people have seen the video? How do I respond to this? And I remember I was getting a few looks, and one guy goes, hey, bro, were you that guy that was on the Channel 9 thing over? And I'm like, yeah, that was me. It's like, hey, man, that was a funny video. So the video, for those wondering, was pretty dumb. It was me in a university lecture, and I was pretending to watch porn out loud without knowing that my headphones weren't plugged in. And yeah, that just went viral. It even reached my dad in China. He even found out about it before I could even tell him what I was doing. And yeah, so it was a moment like that where I was doubting myself for quite a while, and I asked for a sign, and just the sign came to me. So I decided to continue forward.
Mate, it's so interesting because I guess all of these moments become stepping stones for where you end up being and where you are today. But I can imagine that as a young man, I'm 28 now, and I feel that in the last 4 years, 5 years from when I started this, you mature and change so much during that period of your life. And you start to realize the consequences of attention. And whilst I've never been particularly controversial with the podcast, it's been very conversational. I can imagine that when you're getting that much attention for videos that can have conflicting opinion, it starts to develop maybe a residual mental effect on the brain that says, hey, attention drives numbers. Numbers drive the success of my career. I need more attention. I need more numbers. But at some point in time, that becomes damaging, right? Mm-hmm. So at what point did you feel like you were losing the flow? Because I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the change in you as a human being has been off a realignment of purpose and values and direction, right? Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that process where you start to come into conflict with what you're doing.
I think I was always in some general conflict with what I was doing, if I'm honest. I didn't have any ill intent when I was making those crazy prank videos, because to me, all I was doing was putting the joke on myself, not others. Obviously, I would have definitely overstepped the line many, many times. But I think I had a good heart and a good intention behind the motive as to what I was doing for the most part. But then there'd be some times where, as you said, views and attention drive the career forward, right? So it's where's the line? And it was around that time where I did that massive sex noise at Nick Kyrgios' tennis match where I started to question my values, because during that time, I guess what motivated me to do that was two things. The first thing was, as you said, numbers and attention and controversy drives my career forward. But the second thing that made me do what I did was I was in a little circle of fellow pranksters, you could call us, Jackson O'Doherty, Shami, Luco, and we all kind of were friends with each other, but we also had friendly competition with each other. And during that time, which was early 2018, they were all going viral. Jackson and Luke had the silly salmon, Shami and his mates had the you wouldn't do it stuff, and I was left without anything. And although I wasn't exactly the same style of prank as them, I did more crazy public embarrassment, awkward stuff in front of bigger audiences, you could say, I still was relatively thinking that, well, they're going viral, like I need to do something as well. And as you saw, like a lot of people go crazy. They start jumping off bridges. They start, potentially killing themselves, which I fortunately never did. But it was during that time where I felt the push from my peers around me to do something crazy. So after that tennis incident, it was all over the press, all over the media. Like everyone saw it. My dad once saw it again in China. He caught wind. It just went really, really global. And I was like the most hated man in the entire world, at least I thought. I was on a current affair. I was getting just destroyed by the media. Even if you look up my name on Google now, it's just all stuff from that incident, a lot of it at least. And after that, I actually, upon reading some of the articles, which were this dumb internet prankster literally tried to disrespect one of our most, prolific Australian icons. People train their whole lives to have a chance at a match at the Australian Open. This guy just comes in and ruins that. Like things like that actually got to me because I was like, oh, wait a second. I've never wanted to do a prank where it affects someone else in a negative light, but maybe I did overstep in this instance. And I was really like kind of upset with myself about it. I didn't regret it per se because it did obviously help my career move forward, but I did also feel some sense of remorse about it. So I actually messaged Nick Kyrgios on Facebook and I go, listen, bro, just want to apologize for the other day. I'm sure you know why I did this. No bad feelings. Hope all is good. And he actually responded being like, all good, brother. Like, I actually thought it was funny. Like, no stress, man. Like a nice message. And then I actually noticed that when I posted this video on Instagram, he actually liked the video himself. So now I was like, okay, I haven't done anything too bad. It could have turned really sour if he had lost the match, though. I could have been the scapegoat for the blame of that, but he didn't. He won, so it was all good. But I guess that was the first time I really started questioning my morals. And then I got into kind of like pranking my dad and stuff like that and doing videos of my family. So that was a little bit less edgy, you could say. But I guess going back to your question, it's funny, it's ironic because people, especially men, we always want to strive for more in life. We want to get the next bag. We want to obviously attract abundance into our lives. We want to obviously build something like an empire. Men have done that from the dawn of time. And for me, it was about obviously building my career to a point where I was proud of myself, financially stable, and that all came with it. But what happened was, it was ironic because although I was living this life that every single man aspires to have, right? Which is you're famous, got millions of followers, money's rolling in, traveling the world, everyone knows you, parties, girls, you name it. Like that entire lifestyle I had for so many years. But the ironic part about it was that I was still anxious, depressed, unfulfilled, and still seeking more purpose in my life, even though I had those things. And so upon this kind of quest for fulfillment and for satisfaction in terms of like trying to figure out the meaning of life, I was dabbling in a lot of, you could call it new age spirituality, where I was using crystals. I was seeing these Reiki healers. I was seeing these hypnotherapists, all these people that I would hope could help me have a sense of fulfillment, even though I had all these materialistic things. And I was like, why am I depressed? Why is everything always going wrong? Obviously, materialistically and superficially, things were going good, but why was I still not fulfilled? And I felt like everything that society tells us will bring us happiness was a lie. That's what I felt because I had that. And so I kept dabbling in it, kept doing more, did mushrooms, went down this like psychedelic kind of route, went down everything. And I just felt more and more and more like, I don't know, depressed and sad, even though I had it all. And so long story short, I talk about this a lot, but I basically dabbled a bit too hard in the crystals and the Reiki and all these things where a woman I went to see, she opened me up to demons, literally. And I never believed in demons before. And I never believed that there was any bad energies out there. I don't know. I didn't know what I believed. I believed in the universe and stuff. But yeah, essentially what happened was, it's a very long story, but I got infested with bad spirits, you could say. And I didn't know what was going on, bro. This is back in 2021. I went to like all the normal counselors, psychologists, doctors. I did more new age healing. I didn't know what was wrong with me. But all these weird, strange, crazy things started happening in my life where an example would be I'd be in bed, I'd be stabbed by something whenever I'd sleep, wake up an hour later with like a panic attack. I'd hear these voices in my head. Just really weird stuff was happening in my life, like spooky stuff, you could say. And basically I was going through that for a whole year, to the point where it got so much where I almost took my own life because no one knew what was wrong with me. And eventually, you know, through trying literally everything out there and just going through the ringer, everyone's saying, I don't know what's wrong with you. We've never seen this before. All the healing you've done is safe. You know, it's all in your head. You've got OCD. To then I got invited to church one day by a friend. And she goes, hey, Jamie, would you like to come to church? And I'm like, oh, church, man. Like, I went to Catholic schools back in the day and I just hated it. And I didn't like talking about God. I don't know. I was just anti-Jesus for some reason. And I go, you know what? Like, I'm at my lowest point in my entire life. I may as well try this. Like, what's the worst could happen? And I remember, bro, like, she took me to this church in Melbourne because I was living in Melbourne for a couple of years. And I remember so vividly, as the auditorium doors open, I walk in, right? And as I step in the door into the auditorium, I have this literal on the spot, like spiritual encounter with Jesus where I just knew it was him. And he starts speaking to me. He goes, this is where you belong. These are your people. And this is where you're going to get healed. And I start bawling my eyes out. I start just crying like a baby. And I don't know what's going on. And then I got ushered to my seat at the front right of the stage. And I'm just bawling my eyes out. And there's obviously the worship music, which was very touching. There was a sermon, you know, talking about, you know, things in the Bible. And then at the end, they asked anyone in the audience that wanted to put their hand up for salvation. I put my hand up straight away. And yeah, bro, ever since then, it's been a very big shift because I went from living a life of, you know, the partying, the money, the fame, the girls, all that, to then just stopping basically all of it. Like overnight, I stopped partying, I stopped sleeping around. Everything happened within like the space of maybe 2 months. And I just became this new person. I had this understanding of, wow, like I've essentially found God, and this weird, like just peace and fulfillment about everything in my life. And I didn't understand why like Christians, you know, before I became a Christian myself, would always try and talk to people about God. I'm like, bro, just leave your nonsense to yourself. I don't want to hear it, you know, like stop trying to preach to me things that I don't care about. Leave me alone. That's you. I'll do my thing. But when I experienced it, it's like, oh, okay. Like now I get why these Christians are trying to spread the gospel all over the world, because I've experienced it firsthand and it changed my life. And so then, yeah, I just basically had to clean up myself. I moved back to Sydney. And what was funny was during this time, you know, as I said to you before, I'd been going through the last, I don't know, eight years or something, where I was just so engrossed in this fame and this career I had and these pranks and traveling the world. But it was interesting because at the time of, I guess, my, you know, change in direction of my life, I also lost everything. So for some weird reason, like I lost all my money. People stopped knowing who I was. All my followers started going down. Just everything just started to go flatline. And I realized that this was the best thing that happened to me, because it was like God had to humble me to make me understand my new direction and who I was supposed to truly be for the right reasons. So ever since then, man, it's just been like a constant rebuild, but it's been really fulfilling versus before, because now I have the right intentions behind what I'm doing. And I think the change in and the shift in my life has been something that I wish for everyone to have, that's going through like a dark time. Because if I was someone that had everything and then found peace and fulfillment in God, despite having all that stuff, which didn't lead to anything, it's like, I just want others to experience the same thing. So I feel like my life's very mundane, neutral now, but like I'm just so happy, man. Like I'm just peaceful and I'm just happy.
Mate, what a powerful story. There's so many things I want to touch on there. The first is there's an incredible monologue that comes to mind with what you're saying, and I've spoken about it so many times on the podcast, so I want to absolutely apologise to everyone who's heard this for the 20th time. But Guy Ritchie, incredible film director, my favourite director, was on Joe Rogan 7 years ago, and he spoke about the story of the prodigal son. And essentially the message of the story and the way that he sees it and his perspective on it is you have to leave yourself to realize that all of these things that we gain in life are transitory and ephemeral, like they're here and then they're gone.
Temporary, yeah.
Ultimately to end up finding yourself.
Mm.
And it sounds very much like that has been kind of the simplified version of what you've experienced over this last period of your life.
Mm.
I want to ask, when you spoke about this lady who invited demonic feelings or demonic spirits into your life, is that the Reiki healing you were saying?
Yeah.
What does that actually feel like? So you spoke about some of the symptoms of stuff, but like, could you feel an instant change?
Mm-hmm. Straight away.
And then did you go back to her and say, hey, what's going on here?
I did.
What's the story behind that?
It's a long story, bro. But essentially what I'll say is that all she did was she lay me on my back on this massage table for 45 minutes. And she basically said she was opening the chakra points from my head, my heart, and the sexual region. And what she did was she literally got her hands like this in a triangle, put it on the back of my head for like 15 minutes, then got one of her hands and like dipped it like that and put it on my chest there, and then waved her hand around here. And so what happened after was I started like, the first thing I noticed was I felt like I was almost high, like on weed or something. And I felt so spaced out, like I just woken up from a coma or something. And I go, is this normal? She goes, yeah, it's normal, all good. I'm like, okay, cool. And then like what happened when I got home was I started hearing this really dark voice telling me really bad things about myself. And the voice was also like, it was like a weird, soothing, like manipulative voice. And it kind of got to the point where it was telling me like all these bad things. And then it goes, I want you to now kill yourself. So all these voices in my head. The second thing I noticed was I felt like she'd put this like ball into like my chest. This really strange, like it was like an emotional ball I felt. And it was just the worst, most sickening emotion you can possibly imagine. The second thing that happened after that was, and I couldn't get it out. It was just constantly there for like 1 to 2 years, even after I found God. And then the next thing that happened was I started having like heart problems. So I'd be woken up in the middle of the night with this like attack, like where I'd be gasping for air and feeling like this stabbing in my heart. And it got so bad to the point where I had to go to hospital like 9 times that year. They couldn't find nothing until eventually finding I had some sort of arrhythmia problem. But this sort of stuff never happened before I dabbled in all these crazy new age spirituality modalities. And then, just like a bunch of stuff happened, man. Like it's just countless things happened. And I knew something was wrong. So to answer your question, yes, I did ask her, like, what on earth is happening? And she basically said to me, she goes, I've never seen this before. Reiki is completely safe. You're going to have to go to a counselor to talk about your issues with him. And I go, bro, this isn't a counselor problem. You've like literally spiritually done something to me. And I know that something isn't right. And she kind of just kept failing to take any accountability because of potential fear of her own business collapsing or the word getting out that something bad happened. So it's just a really weird presence you feel at all times, if I could put it that way. It's like, you're not yourself, but you also know that it's not in your head, like it's real. And, my pastor down in Melbourne that helped deliver me from this, he does this for a living. Like, he doesn't charge though, it's completely free. But he's been doing this stuff for 20 years, trying to help people out of spiritual affliction through God. And he's seen the most wild stuff where people out there watching right now, if you're currently going through something where you've tried the mental health route, you've tried, the medication, you've tried all the healing, you've tried the counseling, the therapy, all these things, and nothing's worked, you've got to start wondering if it's a spiritual problem. Because spiritual problems do exist, and they are potentially the root cause of so many mental health issues, physical issues. They all stem from somewhere, right? Because we're all spiritual beings inherently. So I knew that I had tried everything, nothing had worked, and it had to be this spiritual problem. And when I was diagnosed with it spiritually, I got rid of it. Like, I'm sweet now. So how do you explain that? An example of this is I had OCD my entire life, and I would get these fixations on things. I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate. It's horrible. Like, you're living with your own worst enemy, which is your brain, and your brain doesn't switch off, and it's just worrying over this, worrying over that, fixating, ruminating. I had that like probably my whole life. And the moment I got delivered from that, and this sounds all woo-woo, I get it. Like no one's going to understand this, but there's literally a demon that afflicts people with OCD. Like there's demons for all sorts of things. They have a responsibility to be targeted at one thing. So when we found that I had a demon of OCD, we got rid of it, and I haven't had OCD in 4 years, bro. Completely gone. No medication, nothing.
Mate, it's crazy. I'll be honest, it's hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? Because when you've never experienced something like that, there is a part of you that almost rejects the possibility that that could happen, right? And I hear you talk about that, and I wonder, when you first experience this demonic possession, as you describe it, I wonder, because I've often thought about, like, and this is just my personal opinion, I've often thought about things like Reiki and gone, bullshit. My bullshit radar's up, right?
Yep.
Because I think there's all these new age opportunities for people to make money that
there
aren't exactly rooted in science, right? And I've probably been, whilst I'm a relatively spiritual guy and I have faith and those sort of things in my life, I find it very hard to believe something that there isn't evidence for, especially in the health world.
Sure.
But I wonder how much of it also comes down to, your likelihood of being affected either negatively or positively by these things is how much you believe in the possibility of that stuff affecting you. You obviously went into it at a time where you were searching for something, right, to improve or change the feeling that you had felt in your life. Does that resonate at all, or is it something else you think?
No. I mean, it does resonate because you're right.
Yeah.
I was looking and I was seeking, but I think a lot of us are looking and seeking, and that's why so many people go down the new age path, because there's some sort of level in their life that they feel unfulfilled in. And it's the case with many people, We're not really taught to thrive in the system that's built around us from school up until, you get in your job and all these things in society. And it's a common thing. And I think that most people out there know that there's something after life. There's like a reason we're here, you could say, or there's like why we're here. How did we get here, And on that quest of search and curiosity, I believe that people try things and they go, well, I did this spiritual practice and I felt this and this happened. And the thing is that when you look into the Bible about how Satan manifests or masquerades himself, he masquerades himself as an angel of light. So we believe, in simple terms, good and evil, you could say. There's obviously light and dark. So if we put light, which we could call God, darkness we could call Satan. Satan's whole role is to convince people he doesn't exist. So the thing that creates his skepticism is that his plan is ultimately working where you don't question anything but the science. But we have to understand that where we came from, science can't even fathom that, or science can't even make a distinction of what actually created us to come to this earth in the first place. What's our purpose? What do we go after? There's obviously a multitude of theories. But I think people that are searching for the truth about life, I think we could say all of us really are. And when you're searching and you're seeking, of course you're going to try things. But ultimately, trying certain things like in New Age, through my experience, through countless people's experiences, you guys can look this up online, it's a fake feeling of comfort and content and spiritual healing. Because what New Age does is it actually basically makes you feel good, but then it leads you further down the path where you further lose your identity because it becomes even more crazy. That's why you see, bush doofs, right? All these festivals in the bush where people are just doing anything and everything, and they feel like that's liberation and freedom. But what I've come to understand is discipline and following commandments is actually freedom, because you have control over your own selfish desires. If I said to you, hey bro, you can do whatever you want today, just whatever you emotionally feel like doing, just go ahead. You're not going to do anything good for yourself. You're going to probably go to Macca's because you feel like you want to have a tasty burger. You're probably going to go, just do things like get on drugs, alcohol, because that's what feels good to the flesh. But we have to make the distinction between flesh and spirit. What does God actually spiritually want us to do and live our lives upon, versus what do we want to do inherently that's going to lead us to destruction? So there's a multitude of angles you can go from. But in my perception, I have found that through going through all this new age stuff and all this spiritual movement, and yeah, of course, some people not having experiences where they've actually had something happen to them like I have, but it's very real, man, extremely real. And the fulfillment and the peace that I found with finding God is something I can't describe.
It's really interesting, right? I grew up going to a Christian school, not because we had very strong religious faith in my family. I would say that my family and I are all pretty similar in the sense that we wouldn't consider ourselves religious people, but we have some faith in something, right? And I've always quite liked the idea of having faith in something. I love my family and my life so much, and like my family is my main thing. So any kind of realm of possibility in which I get to be with my family for the rest of time outside of what I know I'm experiencing right now as life on earth, to me sounds like a pretty sweet deal. And, going to a Christian school, probably similar to your experience, you feel that sometimes it is rammed down your throat every day that like this is the religious practice, and you go through Bible studies and all of that stuff. And I guess as a kid, you probably reject it a little bit more because you're trying to be a little bit different and stand out.
Seems boring, yeah.
Correct. And as a kid, you don't really have time for anything that doesn't stimulate you, right?
Yeah.
And then as I get older, I wouldn't say that I'm any more typically religious, but I know I have some faith in something. Little things like I've got the statue of David tattooed on me because I like the story and the meaning behind it. And there's something about it that gives me a sense of inner peace, that if there is that possibility, and if I continue to be a good human being and show up in a way in which I'm proud of my character, then something about that feels like it's a life well lived.
Yeah.
It is ultimately fulfilling. So to the people who are listening who maybe are challenged by what they think is the status quo, rigid way of participating in a religious belief or having a religious practice, like, is your practice and your faith rooted in those typical things that people would think of as a Christian faith, going to church on Sunday, read the Bible, pray, or have you kind of molded it to fit your life in a way that looks different?
So to me, my perception of faith is that God has put all of us here for a purpose and a reason. It's 1 in 3 or 4 trillion chance of us all being here. And for me, what I've found is through being accountable to God, I'm not trying to take no shortcuts. So I'm not trying to create my own version of Christianity. I'm not trying to do what is right for me in such, because I know that as humans, we're all I guess vulnerable to taking our own paths in life, which there's nothing necessarily wrong with, but I believe that the wisdom that God has put, in the Bible, for example, is one that I would trust more than my own kind of like emotions and feelings. So for me, I think that what I realized when I came to faith was that Christianity and following Jesus isn't actually about a set of rules and about a set of things that you need to do. All Jesus asks is that we believe in him, we believe that he died and resurrected 3 days later, and that he's the Son of God. It's 3 things. And once you believe in those 3 things, we say that you experience salvation, which means you go to heaven after you die. But a lot of people are deceived to thinking that in order to build a relationship with God, you have to do all these things. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can believe in Jesus and then go out and kill people and do all these horrible things. But I'm saying that if you truly have this relationship, then you're going to want to serve God with all your heart. And so a lot of people believe that, but I still believe in these in Jesus and all these things, but I also know that I need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G to make up for the sins I've been participating in for my whole life, or to, I guess, get on the good side of God. But that's actually not God's character at all, because God doesn't want us to necessarily have to do things to earn his love. If you came to me and you said, hey bro, I murdered someone, how many times do you have to donate to the poor? How many times do you have to pray, repent, for God to forgive you? It doesn't make any sense, because we don't know how much is required for forgiveness. So the whole point of Christianity is that all you need to do is build a relationship with Jesus, and that's it. It's not following a religion, so to speak. Yes, there's a set of rules that the Bible commands us to live by, but it's more than that. It's a very, very simple way where you just need to have faith, and the Savior takes care of the rest of it. There's other religions out there where you have to pray a certain amount of times per day. If you do one wrong thing, then you've got to make up for it. But it's humanly impossible to do that, and that's why we believe that Jesus took the price and covered us for all our sins that we've made. So I don't have a problem with following what's in the book, because what I've realized is that by following everything that is in God's word, my life's actually better. That's what I mean by I could make up my own rules, but God knows better than I do. And if I followed my own heart and desires and all these paths that I feel like I want to be taking, down the path of, it actually leads to deception and destruction. And I've done that before. That's a thing. I've followed the things that I wanted to do. I followed the path that I felt like was the best for me. And it led me to, you could say material success for sure, but there was no fulfillment. There was no relationship. There was no guidance that I had. Until finding God, bang, I'm following all the rules and I've never been happier. It's kind of like ironic, to say the least. So I don't try cut corners. I owe my whole life to God. And I'm very happy with, doing that till the day I die.
I tell you what, man, I know one thing's for sure. We'd have a lot more Christian people if they brought some of those Southern Baptist churches to every corner of the world, man. Because I tell you what, that stuff like that's a routine I can get around.
Yeah.
Some voices in church that are bloody angelic.
Yeah.
And that kind of energy. It is cool to see that there's a lot of people, especially I'm still close with a couple of my teachers from school who are, very strong in their faith, and some people who I still actively see a lot in my life who are very strong in their faith. And I always appreciate their purpose and their commitment to being really good people, especially to the people around them. And I think there's something beautiful about anything you find in your life in which you feel it makes you a better person in and amongst society. And it sounds like for you it's done that,
Yeah, man.
And amongst that, you still now get to enjoy all of these great things that are happening in your life, and it hasn't slowed you down. In fact, I think it's probably opened you up to more opportunity in your life. And you see examples of that, like I guess it was the Aussie version of Soccer Aid, right? Where you had Ronaldinho out here and Tim Cahill, and you got to probably, I can imagine, play alongside a lifelong hero. And
that was crazy, man.
Experiences like that. It's very cool.
Because I was trying to be a pro soccer player when I was in high school, and I never made it. And then that opportunity came up, and bro,
What do you think stopped you from making it in that world?
It's a bit of a tangent, but I feel like when I was growing up, I didn't have a dad around. So my dad always lived in China, and I wasn't ever taught how to be like a strong boy or a strong man. My mum did an amazing job raising me from that side of things, but I didn't have the mental or the physical or the emotional capacity to be able to compete with guys that had their dads around, that would go to the matches and say, son, like, you had a bad game, but like, you can do it. I never got told by anyone that I was capable of achieving something like football. My mum was like, yeah, let's try your best, I believe in you, but it's a different energy, right? And my dad was always quite negative towards me playing, and obviously very skeptical. So I feel like, in short, the lack of a masculine figure in my life contributed to me kind of throwing in the towel pretty early. And I had to sort of rebuild myself and understand what it actually means to be a man only a few years ago. So I think that skill-wise and talent-wise was there, but I couldn't even deploy that on the field because of, just that lack I felt, during my childhood. So that's why I believe, things didn't really work out in that field.
I don't know how this would coincide with your faith, but do you believe in destiny or free will?
Free will for sure, yeah. And purpose, definitely.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because I almost feel that, for me personally, I feel that maybe in life we all have a couple of potential paths that are somewhat written. And along the way we have all these forks in the road in which we get the opportunity to exercise that free will and take the turns that lead us to ultimately where we are. I guess sitting here today, 2025, how old are you?
31.
31. You're a young looking man for
Thank
31,
you.
brother. That's good genetics. That's going to serve you well in 10 years.
Correct.
What do you feel is next?
So for me, bro, like I see a lot of corruption and volatility in the world today, from especially during COVID times to, I guess, this division in society between, you could say, left and right, through society becoming a lot more, I guess, driven by an agenda at hand. And I can see right through it. And for me personally, I want to start using my platforms to, spread the truth. We currently do documentaries on my YouTube where we investigate certain situations and really just kind of like be a voice for the people that aren't being heard. amongst the censorship. So for me personally, I believe this is what God's purpose is for my life, to really, I guess showcase certain things that we need to be talking about through my platforms, and ultimately, showing people that the life I used to live, it's not just me saying it. You get so many people that come out and say, bro, like I had all this stuff as well, and it brought me nothing. So I believe a big purpose of mine is to help bring the lost, to finding God and finding fulfillment, and just keep on, being the best person I can be.
The last thing I'll ask you before we've got to let you go is, when you're exploring some of those current social situations and doing the documentaries on YouTube, which I've watched a few of, and you do a really good job of it, what's probably been the most eye-opening or shocking thing that you've investigated so far?
There's a lot, man. There's a lot. In fact,
I seen, just for people who are listening, I just seen the look there between you and your mate in the studio, which gives me the feeling that there's something bigger than maybe you can share at the moment.
Not really. I'm just trying to think. We've gone through so much. Yesterday's one. I just dropped one yesterday called I went to the most woke city in Australia.
Okay, what is the most woke city in Australia?
Melbourne.
Okay.
So that was filmed recently. And I think that was pretty eye-opening, because you can kind of see how much things like radical feminism has taken over the world and really just positioned males and females against each other. And I think that's just horrible. So we did a whole video on that, just showcasing, I guess, people's different ideologies under the guise of progressive culture, which I believe are actually very backwards in many ways. So I think that was one where, there was a lot of passion behind it. There was a lot of people that had a lot of different things to say, and I think that gives a good representation of, I guess, some of the topics we'll be covering in the future.
For sure. Did you feel like you were able to obtain, because I haven't watched that video, like both sides of the argument?
In that video, not really, because we went to Melbourne and we were mainly interviewing people on that side of the coin.
Okay.
However, I think their ideologies and actions kind of speak for themselves. We did get a few people that were on the opposition, you could say. But I believe that, for me personally, I believe that society has gone very, very radical due to the lack of believing in a higher power such as God. I feel like no one has accountability anymore. Everything's about worshipping self, and that people are not really taught to, build communities or help other people. It's more about, what do I want to do? How can I build myself up? Instead of, putting yourself second, humbling yourself and working for the greater good. I just feel that that's a big problem we have in society today. It's
interesting, right? Because I think that social media right now, I had this conversation with a guest a couple of weeks ago. It feels like outrage culture and argumentative culture seems to win on the social algorithm, which kind of makes you feel as though people are either pinned against each other or on the completely same side. And it's probably not the truth of 80% of the population. Like, I'm sure there's, maybe 10% who exist on the extreme right or 10% on the extreme left. And I feel personally that majority of society sits somewhere around the centre and wants to be able to keep a roof over their head, provide for their family, spend time with the people that they love, make sure that their health's in check, and have a life in which they feel fulfilled. Yes. And that's the problem with media confirmation bias, because what we're seeing in the news and seeing in the statistics, for example, they're all fraudulent, but they're also being sort of like, the information has been a part of a certain agenda they're trying to get across. For example, the amount of people that got vaccinated, who knows if it was really that much? The media was obviously pushing for it. I didn't get it. But I believe there was, from just personal experience, I believe there were so many more people that actually didn't get the vaccine than was told to us on social media. All this misinformation stuff, all this. And you're right, like it probably is like a select smaller percentage than we think. However, what social media and the media does is it makes you feel like you're the minority, even though everyone's thinking the same thing as you. They make you think that the majority are these people that are, going crazy over certain things. So that's also the problem. We don't know what's true anymore, So for us, we love delving into this topic, and we love, trying to get as close to the truth as possible and just sharing different thoughts. For sure. Mate, it's an interesting thing to explore. What we're currently experiencing in society is very different to maybe the generations before us and what they've experienced. Whilst What do they say? All trends repeat themselves.
Yeah, history repeats itself.
You know, it's interesting to see what we'll experience over maybe the next 10, 20 years that our parents and grandparents did. But, mate, it's been really fun to explore this. I'm conscious of our time. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else we should cover before you leave? Anything you want to promote? Anything coming out?
Not really. Just, we're just going to go harder on the documentaries and, hopefully get a few more interesting investigations out.
Mate, so good. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, bro.
My pleasure.